Chapter 919. 3 days later, the army left Tiger Subdue Pass in the north and officially passed through the Qinling Mountains. In another 3 days they would almost reach the area protected by the steel walls. The heavens were not in their favor. At this moment it started to drizzle. Lin Muyu quickly opened 2 umbrellas and handed one to Qin Yin and one to Tang Xiaoxi. Then she took the 3rd umbrella from Wei Chou. The march could not be delayed, but the army had prepared very little rain gear. There were only a handful of people qualified to hold umbrellas. Qin Yin seemed to remember something. She picked up the long sword hanging on the horse's back and said, "Hear this. It's time to return it to its owner." Stellar sword. Lin Muyu finally realized that this was her sword. She could not help but ask in surprise, "I remember that brat Xiao Pingwa took the stellar sword with him. Why is it with Xiao Yin?" Qin Yin smiled faintly. "Xiao Pingwa gave it to me. I didn't know at the time, but now I understand. He took something from you and gave it to me. Big brother Yu, did Xiao Pingwa give you anything strange?" "Well," Lin Muyu searched her Qingkun pouch and took out a sharp sword. "Hear this. There are words carved on it. The hilt is in the shape of a cross. It should be a crusader broadsword. You know it." "I've seen a similar sword in the Banished Lands. Xiao Pingwa must have taken it from someone when he was playing in the Banished Lands. It's strange, why is Xiao Pingwa in the Banished Lands? I've always kept it in a different space, but I've never been to that space. Maybe it's the Banished Lands." As she spoke, Lin Muyu took out a pile of cloth from her Qingkun pouch. "This was also given to me by Xiao Pingwa from the Banished Lands. It looks like a coarse dress. It's so short." Qin Yin's face instantly turned red. "That's me." Lin Muyu was shocked. "You didn't really wear it, did you?" And her voice was as soft as a mosquito's and her face was blushing. Lin Muyu snorted. "Come to think of it, this holy dragon has never done anything like a holy dragon. What is this?" "He gave me Xiao Yin's dress and it's the original one." Qin Yin's face turned even redder. "Brother Yu, what are you talking about?" Tang Xiaoxi raised her umbrella and said with a smile, That's right, that's right. It was clearly Little Apple who brought you and Xiao Yin together, but you didn't know how to appreciate his kindness. Oh no, you didn't know how to appreciate the dragon's heart." In the different space, Acatosaurus let out a joyful cry. Then a spatial rift was torn open and it had already climbed out. Clouds floated around it as it slowly twisted its body and flew next to Lin Muyu, looking like it was waiting for a reward. Lin Muyu patted Xiao Pingwa's head and said, "All right, you did a great job. Although I didn't recognize this dress and Xiao Yin also lost her memory at the time and couldn't remember the stellar sword and me, you still have some conscience and did a good deed." As she spoke, Lin Muyu folded the dress again and put it back into her Qingkun pouch. "Do you still want to keep it?" Qin Yin asked. "It's worth commemorating. After all, Xiao Yin wore it in the Banished Lands. This proves that the conditions in the Banished Lands must be very difficult. Otherwise you wouldn't have to wear such a coarse dress." And Qin Yin nodded. "The Banished Lands is a place without laws. There is only slaughter and plunder. I unified the entire plain during my days in the Banished Lands, but after I leave, the place will definitely fall into chaos again. The Banished Lands is a huge plain dump. People who have been exiled from various major plains will enter the Banished Lands. There is endless strife there and there will never be peace. It's a good place to train." Lin Muyu rubbed her nose. Tang Xiaoxi glanced at her and said, "Mu, you're already a god king. Coupled with that abnormal formless elephant spell, you'll only be bullying people if you go to the Banished Lands." Bullying people is also a kind of training. After all, the premise of upholding justice is that the power of justice is stronger than evil. This is only natural. After we've pacified this plain, we can consider traveling to the Banished Lands. What do you think? Are you going? The 2 great beauties immediately nodded in unison. "Yes, of course we're going." Wei Chou asked carefully, "Your Highness, can I go?" "What are you going to do?" Lin Muyu asked. "I'll serve you tea and water." "No need." Lin Muyu looked back at Wei Chou and said, "Wei Chou, you're not young anymore. Isn't it time for you to get married and have children? You're Duque after all. How can you always be alone?" Wei Chou took a deep breath. "The country is still in danger. How can I be in the mood to get married? Let's think about how to win the Battle of Tsangnan Province. What do you think? The Tianji Empire has deployed 300,000 soldiers to attack the steel wall this time. Marshal Baiming Huan's strength can't be underestimated. He also has the help of the Tianji Empire's main force, the Dragon Knights. It's said that Lin Tonghai, Dora, and other God-state warriors have also come from the 8 wastelands to help. Moreover, their chief strategist is that Gong Xiangming. This is even more difficult to deal with. Whether it's by force or wits, we don't have an absolute chance of winning. Gong Xiangming again. Lin Muyu frowned. It's not easy to deal with. But Qin Yin asked, Dora is here too. Yes, our Warhawk scouts saw Dora, Luo Fei and Dali from afar. Lin Tonghai is also here. It should be true. The Tianji Empire has gathered the superior forces of the northern and southern legions and is planning to break through the steel protective wall of Tsangnan province. As long as the steel protective wall is broken, they will be able to march straight in and attack the heart of the empire, Lanyan City. Don't worry, they won't have this chance. Lin Muyu said with a cold face, send out all our scouts and have them explore and pave the way forward 24 hours a day. Don't be careless. Bring the army and try to reach the battlefield in 2 days. Yes. Tianshu province was closer to Tsangnan province, so Feng Jixing's speed was faster. The day before Lin Muyu's troops arrived at the steel wall, Feng Jixing had already led 100,000 soldiers to the steel wall. The army was stationed in the Unicorn Forest behind the steel wall, while Feng Jixing led the Imperial Guard cavalry directly into the steel wall. Qin Yan and Chu Chu welcomed them in person. Feng Jixing's 100,000 soldiers were like a dose of calming medicine, putting Qin Yan and Chu Chu at ease. General Feng, you're here. Chu Chu greeted him with a smile. Greetings, Chu. Feng Jixing cupped his hands and said with a smile, let's go, we'll go to the top of the wall to take a look. You guys also tell me in detail about the battle situation these 2 days. Yes. Climbing up the high wall, everyone looked into the distance. On the other side of the Daojiang River, there were already densely packed battle flags of the Tianji Empire. Furthermore, the riverside was filled with bamboo rafts and wooden boats. The army of the Tianji Empire had practically cleared out the forest on the east bank and built countless wooden rafts that could be used to cross the river. This scene looked exactly the same as when the demon race attacked, except that the Tianji Empire did not build high walls and used projectile tactics to shoot armor demons over. Looking at the land in the east, Feng Jixing could not help but suck in a breath of cold air, saying, what a majestic and mighty army. No wonder they were able to defeat Yu's Longdan army camp in Lingdong province. Qin Yan said, they did not defeat them, but Big Brother chose to take the initiative to retreat and deal with them. He did not confront them head-on. That's right. Yu's very wise. The total strength of the Flowing Wind Army and the Divine Cloak Army is more than 10 times that of the Longdan army camp. Adding the Dragon Knights and the practitioners of the Divine Cloak Army, the chances of the Longdan army camp winning is probably less than 10%. Avoiding the battle is the wisest choice. Feng Jixing turned around and flew to the sky outside the city. Looking at the uneven grooves on the steel wall, he said, they already attacked yesterday. Yes, they attacked for 2 days. Qin Yan said, but they were all small attacks. They only used a small portion of the Divine Cloak Army's front line. They tried to use the profound energy of the practitioners to break through the wall, but they failed. Our magic crystal crossbows are able to completely restrain the practitioners of the Divine Cloak Army. Is that so? How many magic crystal crossbows are left? Around 30,000. We used 20,000 yesterday. Yen. Feng Jixing helplessly patted Qin Yan's shoulder and said, you are too honest. If you have the time, you should learn from your big brother Yu. The Divine Cloak Army's actions are obviously to exhaust our magic crystal crossbows. Now that you have used up all of your resources, I want to see how you are going to defend against their next round of attacks. Qin Yan's face was overwhelmed with shock. This? I have never thought of it. Forget it. Feng Jixing looked into the distance and pointed at a certain place on the city wall. Head south from here. Withdraw all the troops and replace them with my men. They are more experienced in fighting the Tianji army. Yes. Is there any news from Yu's side? When will he arrive? Yesterday's letter said that he will arrive in 2 days. Calculating it, at this time tomorrow Big Brother and His Majesty cousin sister should be here with 60,000 troops. That's great. Feng Jixing grinned and rubbed his palms together. In that case, as long as I can hold on for 1 day when Yu arrives, I'll be able to quit and let him take charge of the situation. Ouyang Yen smiled faintly at the side. Prince Xian Feng Jixing. As expected, he is a hands-off shopkeeper. The real hands-off shopkeeper is Her Highness, who is together with you. Feng Jixing touched his nose and smiled bitterly. How am I considered a hands-off shopkeeper? I have the body of a shop assistant and the life of a shopkeeper. I haven't received a single cent of military pay, and I've wasted 6 years of my youth. Chu Chu, Scholarling, and the others did not wish to speak anymore. Zhang Wei, Luo Yu, and the others could not help but laugh out loud. Ouyang Yan said, "Your youth isn't worth much anyway. Why are you feeling sorry for yourself here? When Her Highness Qin Yin arrives, you can ask for military pay." Qin Yan was surprised. "Your Highness Prince Exen, it can't be that you haven't received any military pay for the past 6 years, right? What do you think?" Feng Jixing glanced at him. Qin Yan revealed a look of respect. "Then how did you endure for so many years?" At the side, Luo Yu said, "Your Highness Prince Zhong, when Zhang Wei confiscated the assets of a corrupt official in Tianshu province 2 years ago, he kept half of the Jining coins as the military pay for the imperial guards. As the commander, there are naturally many benefits as well. Don't think that he doesn't have any military pay. He is eating and drinking well every day. Don't mention it." Feng Jixing continued to look toward the east and said, "If Baiming Huan attacks today, you will be the first to fight." "Yes, Commander." Luo Yu cupped her fists, looking confident. Chapter 920. In the immortal world, beams of light exploded in the midst of the spirit mountains. This was already the 27th day since the war between the eastern and western immortal world. Both sides had gathered tens of thousands of spirit mountains to boost their godly energy, and gathered over 30,000 godly realm experts to fight against each other. This war had destroyed countless spirit mountains and destroyed countless planes. It was already impossible to calculate how many spirit mountains had been destroyed in this war. A war between the gods was destined to be a calamity for mortals. This was inevitable. Boom! The flaming battle-axe slashed across the sky, as if it was tearing the heavens apart. The flaming axe light tore through the air and directly turned 2 four-winged angels into ashes. The 7 luminaries demon emperor was at the forefront of the battle formation. Facing the human wall formed by the entire angel army in front of him, he showed no fear. After striking with the Pangu axe in his left hand, he quickly raised the Xianyuan sword in his right hand and laughed loudly. Come on. The more people there are, the easier it is for me to kill. Let me see how capable you long-haired birdmen are." In the center of the human wall, Ruler Claude's entire body was covered in lightning. Rays of light shot out from his body, almost raising the power of the law of light to the extreme. He shouted in a low voice, "Xian Eva, attack with me." A ball of light enshrouded Eva's palm. She nodded and said, "Ruler, you must be careful. This attack from the 7 luminaries demon emperor is not simple." Xian frowned slightly. The sharp sword in her hand emitted a light that soared into the sky. She shouted in a low voice, "Seventh slash, God slaying." Behind the 7 luminaries demon emperor, Xiao Fairy looked into the distance. She could not help but tremble. "Demon emperor, be careful. Claude's attack is very strong. Xian's slash behind him is also very sharp. You must not underestimate her. I will strengthen your shield and life force. You must use your strongest attack to deal with it." With that, Xiao shouted softly. The divine power in her body whistled out. It was the power of the law of life. Green divine power turned into a boundless domain that spread around the 7 luminaries demon emperor. The 7 luminaries demon emperor felt as if he was bathing in a spring breeze. The divine power that he had lost was also recovering rapidly. It was as if he had been resurrected. "Come on." The 7 luminaries demon emperor's fighting spirit rose. He laughed and shouted at the Western Divine Realms Angel Legion. "Useless trash. All of you are weak chickens. If you have the guts, come and fight me. Dai Stupid idiot Ming throwing Lu Mao." Claude's face turned ashen when he uttered that line of Cantonese. "Fight." With a roar, Claude raised his palm. Light shot out. Beams of light gathered in the space. In the blink of an eye, they shot through several spiritual mountains in East Heaven. Even a few God King powerhouses were turned into blood mist. They were evaporated by the power of light. As the ruler of the Western Divine Realm, Claude naturally had his strengths. Xian brandished her sword. The sword light descended from the sky. The scorching power could be felt from afar. This attack was indeed worthy of its name, god-slaying. Ordinary gods, even god-emperors, might not be able to withstand the fatal attack of this seventh slash. Come at me. The 7 luminaries demon emperor suddenly turned around. With a light flip of his wrist, power whistled out from the Xianyuan sword. He shouted, "Come, have a taste of my 7 glorious stars transformation." Boom, boom, boom. Behind the devil emperor there seemed to be a canopy of stars that led straight to another world. At this moment, the power of countless resplendent stars in that canopy of sky was bombarding the human wall of the Western god realm with a destructive force. Cries of agony and wails filled the air. Countless feathers were scattered in the air. Countless 2-winged and 4-winged angels had died to the power of the stars. The 7 glorious stars transformation was already terrifying enough to begin with, let alone when it was strengthened by the Xianyuan sword. The 7 brilliance demon emperor's attack had killed at least 100 divine kings and over 1,000 ultimate gods. Block it. Claude held the wall of light in his hand and continuously resisted the impact of the 7 glorious stars transformation. Finally, with a poochie sound, he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Even the law spirit beads that flew out of his body shattered. He was already seriously injured. Protect the ruler. Xian waved her long sword and slashed dozens of times in a row. Light surged and forcefully shattered the power of dozens of stars. She was not in a good state either. Her face was pale and she had used too much power. However, she still looked behind her and shouted, "Eva, what are you waiting for? Take the ruler and leave through the wormhole." Yes. Eva suddenly hugged Claude's injured body. With a wave of her palm, a huge black hole appeared behind her. A light flashed and her and Claude's bodies disappeared into the darkness. No one knew where they went. Xian suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. At that moment she completely gave up resisting. Her beautiful eyes were filled with despair. She gently opened her arms and watched the 7 luminaries demon emperor fly toward her. Buzz buzz. The Xianyuan sword emitted faint holy power and directly pressed against Xian's neck. The blade was very sharp and could pierce through her skin at any time. The 7 luminaries demon emperor looked at her indifferently and sneered. "Is this the strongest seraph Xian in the Western divine realm? You do have some tricks up your sleeve, but compared to the strongest power of my East Heaven, you are still far from it. Do you see, your master has already abandoned you and ran away? Do you still want to continue working for him?" Xian closed her eyes. "Kill. Why do you have to do this?" The 7 luminaries demon emperor actually had a heart of love. He said, "If you are willing to pledge allegiance to my East Heaven, I will give Sun Feng's position to you." In the distance, Sun Feng was stunned. He didn't say anything, but he cursed in his heart. "Mother **Ker demon emperor, you are tricking me." Xian smiled faintly. "No need. Kill." "Why?" Xiao flew up and asked, "Xian, why do you have to work for a despicable person like Claude?" "I owe the ruler a debt of gratitude for recognizing and saving my life," Xian said softly. "He saved me from the ruins and gave me the identity of a seraph. I will not betray him." "So, you are determined?" The 7 luminaries demon emperor's eyes were cold. Xian closed her eyes again. But the chill on her neck suddenly disappeared. The 7 luminaries demon emperor sheathed his sword and said, "Forget it, I won't kill you. Otherwise someone will blame me." "You?" Xian looked at him in shock. "Why?" The 7 luminaries demon emperor laughed. "Because you are Xin's sister. When she was in the Western divine realm you took care of her a lot. Xin is Qin Yin. She is Lin Muyu's girlfriend and Lin Muyu is my sworn brother. In other words, you are Lin Muyu's sister-in-law. If I kill my brother's sister-in-law, do you think he will cut me with a knife?" Xian. As a seraph, Xian's entire life was burdened with killing and domination. She was a serious person, but now she met the 7 luminaries demon emperor, the king of gods, who was not serious at all. For a moment she didn't know what to say. She only felt mixed feelings and her heart was in a mess. The 7 luminaries demon emperor continued, "You and Qin Yin will ascend to heaven sooner or later, and they will definitely side with me. If you continue to be stubborn, Xian, I'm afraid we will have to fight sooner or later. Today you saved Claude's life, so you have repaid the favor you owe him. Next you will owe me and you a favor. As for how you will repay it, it's up to you." Go, my celestial army is about to crush them. This time I want the rights to rule thousands of planes in the eastern territory of the Western Divine Realm. Go back and tell Claude to wash his neck and wait for me in the temple. I will come sooner or later. Xian frowned. Demon Emperor must you kill? Why not? The 7 luminaries' Demon Emperor's face turned sinister. For the sake of a sovereign lattice, Claude sent so many gods to the Shattered Cauldron realm to kill my brother. Does he think I will let him off? Go back and tell Claude that I can forgive the tens of thousands of gods in the Western Divine Realm, but not him. I want him to know the consequences of offending my brother, the 7 luminaries' Demon Emperor. He will be reduced to ashes. Xian felt a slight chill in her heart. She raised her sword and turned to leave. There were still so many angels in the sky who hadn't retreated. Their faces were filled with confusion. Sun Feng raised his long sword and streaks of light flew out from the eastern heaven realm. In the blink of an eye, the sky was once again filled with killing. This time, there was no need for the 7 luminaries' Demon Emperor to personally take action. The outcome of this battle had already been decided. The Western Divine Realm was doomed. They had lost at least half of their god emperors and god kings. They had no way of contending against the eastern heaven. Looking at the Xianyuan sword in his hand, the 7 luminaries' Demon Emperor said indifferently, "All right, your mission in the divine realm has been completed. Go to the human realm and continue to complete your emperor hegemony." Xiao smiled. "Are you really planning to give the Xianyuan sword to you? This is your precious baby." The 7 luminaries' Demon Emperor smiled. "No, it is not my precious baby. My precious baby is something else." "Oh, then what is it?" "I don't know either." The 7 luminaries' Demon Emperor murmured and smiled. Suddenly he activated his divine power and locked his gaze on the Shattered Cauldron realm in the distance. After sensing Lin Muyu's aura, he suddenly threw the Xianyuan sword out. Immediately the long sword was wrapped in thick flames. It directly penetrated the wall of the plane and turned into a stream of light, flying towards the human realm. At night, in the jungle of Tsongnan province, the army temporarily rested. After a day of rapid marching, many people were already exhausted. It was a summer night and there were many mosquitoes in the jungle. However, fireflies rose and fell in the grass, adding a sense of tranquility to the murderous atmosphere. Lin Muyu leaned against a towering tree and sat on the roots. She opened her right hand and hugged Qin Yin in her arms, while her left hand held Tang Xiaoxi's small hand and held her in her arms. The stars were dim. The 3 of them looked at each other and smiled. They had a tacit understanding. No one said anything and quietly enjoyed this rare peace. If only they could be together like this forever. Buzz. A ball of flames descended from the sky and landed on a rock less than 5 meters away with a bang. The rock was directly smashed into pieces and the flames rose into the sky. F***ck, what was that? Lin Mui was shocked. The 2 beauties in her arms also turned pale. Chapter 921. The center of the giant rock was almost completely melted. About 10 meters deep into the ground, a ball of fire wrapped around a bright and dazzling long sword stabbed into the ground. One could feel a strong sense of righteousness from it. This righteousness was not something that any divine weapon in the human world could compare to. At least Lin Muyu had never seen it before. "It's a magic weapon," he said with certainty. "It's the weapon that Brother Demon Emperor delivered to me." Qin Yin smiled faintly and pushed his arm. "Then why aren't you going to get it? Don't let others snatch it away." Lin Muyu leaped into the deep pit and circled around the Xianyuan sword. Then she reached out and gently grasped the hilt of the sword. Suddenly her entire body trembled. She felt a strange sense of familiarity. It was as if the power of the Xianyuan sword and the supreme divine power in her body had some kind of subtle resonance. On the delicate and majestic hilt, 2 words Xianyuan were engraved, which made Lin Muyu's heart beat faster. Could this be the legendary ancient magic weapon, the Xianyuan sword? This sword had been away from the human world for too long, and the 7 luminaries' Demon Emperor ruled the East Heaven. If they wanted to find the Xianyuan sword, it should be the 7 luminaries' Demon Emperor who found it first. And the reason why there was this resonance was because Lin Muyu's supreme divine power came from Fuxi, and the Xianyuan sword came from Xianyuan Xiaoyu. They were originally of the same origin. With a little force she pulled the sword out of the scabbard. Suddenly a clear ding sound of the sword echoed. The sword was bright and translucent, showing the shape of all things in the world. It was very majestic. It really lived up to the name of the Xianyuan sword. Lin Muyu's heart beat faster. The Xianyuan sword seemed to be innately compatible with her power. If she wielded the Xianyuan sword to attack, her power would probably increase by at least 50%. Looking at the sky, he smiled and said, "Thank you, big brother. Wait for me in the heaven realm. I will come to find you as soon as I complete my mission in the mortal realm." She grabbed the scabbard and leaped onto the surface. At this moment, Wei Chou, Jin Yifan, Su Yu, Su Jiantao, Teralin and the others had all heard the commotion and were stunned when they saw Lin Muyu flying out with an unparalleled divine sword. "Your Highness, you that is?" Xing Yifan asked. "Xianyuan Xia Yu sword." Lin Muyu answered briefly, "The sword of the Yellow Emperor." However, the Shattered Cauldron realm might not have any legends about the Xianyuan sword. Jin Yifan nodded. "Yes, indeed I don't. However, there is a legend in the Heaven Realm regarding one of the 10 great divine weapons. I didn't expect that your Highness would really obtain a divine weapon. Congratulations." "Thank you, Master Fan." Lin Muyu smiled and said to Qin Yin, "Shaoyin, looks like I can give you the Star's sword. It will be your sword from now on. The Heaven-suppressing sword has also been lost." "Alright, thank you, your Highness Emperor Qin." Qin Yin nodded happily. She had experienced a lot and seemed to have matured a lot. She no longer called Lin Muyu Big Brother Yu in public, but called him by his title. This seemed more dignified, but it didn't affect the intimacy between the two at all. After all, everyone could see that Qin Yin and Lin Muyu were in love with each other. This was a well-known fact. Su'er said, "With this Xianyuan Xiaoyu sword, we should have a higher chance of winning against the Tianji Empire. Even if we encounter experts like Baiming Huan and Dora, we should not be at a disadvantage." "Yes." Tang Xiaoxi nodded, "But that Dora also has a divine weapon and is very powerful. If we encounter her, we still have to be careful. That woman is very vicious." Lin Muyu gripped the Xianyuan sword tightly and said, "If we really encounter Dora, let me take care of her." "No." Qin Yin pulled Lin Muyu's wrist and said, "Leave Dora to me. Since I came down from the Western Divine Realm with her, I can't ignore the mistakes I made unintentionally. Dora killed Marquis Yao Yuan of the Tranquil Sea and Duke Luo Exen of the North. She has a blood feud with me and I have to take care of her. Otherwise, I won't be able to face the spirits of Lord Yao Yuan and Duke Luo Exen in heaven." "Yes, that's good. Leave Baiming Huan to me." "Yes." Lin Muyu looked around and said, "Everyone rest early. We will break camp in 4 hours and try to reach the Unicorn Forest by noon to meet up with Big Brother Feng and Yan." "Yes, your Highness." Everyone left one by one. The march was very simple and they didn't even bring tents. So Lin Muyu still chose to rest under a tree where there were not many people. Tang Xiaoxi and Qin Yin snuggled in each other's arms and soon fell asleep, breathing evenly. Lin Muyu looked at their sleeping posture and couldn't help but smile. Then she closed her eyes and fell asleep as well. After a long time, when the sky was still dark, Lin Muyu suddenly woke up. In the Spirit Pulse art, a powerful force was approaching quickly. At the same time, Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi woke up as well. Qin Yin frowned slightly and said, "Someone is coming. And very strong." Tang Xiaoxi added, "No, he's injured." Lin Muyu smiled faintly and said, "His aura is sometimes strong and sometimes weak. Let's go and meet this person before the army moves." "Yes." The 3 figures flashed and disappeared into the distance. In the dense forest 5 miles away, a warhorse was hurriedly galloping through the forest. However, the rider suddenly pulled on the reins. The warhorse neighed and slid a few meters on the grass. He slowly lifted his cloak, revealing the face of a middle-aged man. He sneered and said, "Come out, you guys." On the branch, 3 people floated down. It was Lin Muyu and the other 2. The middle-aged man could sense the existence of Lin Muyu and the others at such a close distance. This meant that his strength was not weak. He raised his eyebrows and stared at Qin Yin's face. He said, "I know you. You are Xin, the first place of the God's chosen trial and a level 7 battle angel. Why are you with 2 people from the Qin Empire?" Qin Yin closed her eyes, but she could almost see the person's silhouette with her spiritual sense. She said, "I am not only Xin, I am also Qin Yin, Qin Jin's daughter." "Who are you?" "Me." The middle-aged man laughed coldly and said, "My name is Mo Luo." I am the dispatcher of the southern tribes of the Western Heaven Realm. I came from the banished land. However, the army was tricked by the despicable 7 luminaries demon emperor. Most of them have fallen and I am one of the survivors. Xin, listen to my advice. Immediately follow me to the Tianji Empire's camp and apologize to Marshal Baiming Huan. Maybe if I speak up for you he will forgive you and spare your life. A beautiful smile appeared on Qin Yin's face. Are you asking me to submit to the Western Heaven Realm again? You are someone who has experienced the Battle Angel's inheritance. Your bloodline has already been integrated with the power of the Western Divine Realm. But are you still thinking about the ties of mortals? Qin Yin smiled faintly. I am Qin Yin. I am Qin Jin's daughter. I was once the ruler of this land. That is all. The Western Heaven Realm's gift to me is a kind of plunder. I remember the pain of losing my paradise. I remember Claude's greed and cruelty. Moluo, I will give you a chance. Immediately surrender to the Qin Empire. Otherwise you will not be able to leave this place today. What do you mean? Mo Luo became alert. Only now did he realize that Lin Muyu and Tang Xiaoxi were slowly increasing their divine power. He had completely underestimated the two of them. In fact, their strength was not inferior to his at all. Mo Luo could not help but roar in anger. The war horse under him could not withstand the divine power and turned into a pile of blood mist. Mo Luo was in the air. His black robe suddenly shattered and 4 dazzling white wings appeared on his back. It was a 4-winged angel. A 4-winged angel with the cultivation of a god emperor. No wonder he could penetrate the flame knot of the 7 luminaries demon emperor and not die. Be careful. Tang Xiaoxi's face tensed up. A god emperor of the 71 heavenly grottos. So powerful. Mo Luo laughed aloud and slowly drew a sword of light. He looked down at the 3 of them and said, the 3 of you are only god kings. None of you have become a god emperor, so you don't know the difference between god emperors and god kings. Today I'll be merciful and let you understand this difference. Come, which one of you wants to die first? Qin Yin said faintly, so you are saying that you are not willing to surrender and want to go to Baiming Huan to listen to his orders. I am a 4-winged angel of the Western Heaven Realm. Naturally, I will not be controlled by the people of the Broken Cauldron Realm. Give up, Xin. Since I cannot change your mind, I will bring your head back to the Western Divine Realm to apologize to the Lord Ruler. You. Qin Yin gritted her teeth. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly and tiny golden red flames lingered on each of her eyelashes. The surroundings suddenly became scorching hot, and the flaming eyes were about to come out. Wait. Lin Muyu suddenly raised her arm and blocked the flaming eyes with a strong palm. She smiled. Xiaoyin, you don't have to do anything. I can take care of this Mo Luo by myself. Can you? Qin Yin asked. Don't worry. If I don't have this ability, how can I protect you and Xiaoxi in the future? Lin Muyu smiled confidently. She slowly pulled out her sword. Instantly the light of the Xianyuan sword shot up into the sky. The surroundings immediately emitted a strong righteous aura. Mo Luo was slightly startled. He never thought that there would be such a strong person in the Broken Cauldron Realm. Moreover, this person was wearing the military insignia of the Qin Empire. Obviously he was an enemy. Lin Muyu? Mo Luo suddenly asked. You know me? Haha, your supreme head is mine. Come and take it if you can. Lin Muyu raised her long sword horizontally. With a confident smile on her face, she decisively attacked first. She silently recited the mental cultivation method of the invisible elephant spell. The Xianyuan sword directly swept out with the power of the overwhelming righteous aura and the chaos of all lives. Moreover, the force field of the invisible elephant spell completely controlled the surroundings. The opponent did not even have a chance to break the void and escape. Chapter 922. Mo Luo was a 4-winged angel. Even in the Western Heavens realm he was a respected figure. In his own plane he was a godlike existence. Therefore he naturally did not care about a divine king like Lin Muyu. Buzz buzz buzz. The light sword in his hand was filled with energy. He slammed it towards Lin Muyu's Xianyuan sword. Bang. Not only did Lin Muyu's sword carry the power of the chaotic element of the common life, it also borrowed the power of the earth in the forest. A mere first strike actually forcefully shook off Mo Luo's light sword. Good. Tang Xiaoxi clapped and cheered. Don't be too happy yet. Mo Luo sneered. His body was surrounded by the scorching sun, evaporating the rain and dew in the forest. Suddenly, there was a magnificent scene of clouds rising. The corner of his mouth curled up. He said, "That attack just now, I only used 30% of my strength. Don't be complacent too early. You will die a horrible death." Lin Muyu did not speak. She suddenly moved quickly. She used falling star step. Stepping on meteors, she moved around Mo Luo at a speed that was hard to catch with the naked eye. Mo Luo could not help but take a deep breath. What a fast movement technique. He had to stay calm and not rely on his eyes to judge. He had to rely on his aura. Otherwise, it would be difficult to block Lin Muyu's next attack. But it was still too late. Bang! Stepping on the void, Lin Muyu's figure shrouded in the light of the Xianyuan sword bloomed in the night sky. Blood-red energy flew up and the two luminaries' demonic dance directly hit the opponent's back. Mo Luo could not dodge or even turn around. He could only swing his sword to block from behind. Boom! The power of the 7 planets clashed with the light elemental law divine power. This time it was Lin Muyu who had the upper hand. Mo Luo took a few steps forward, looking rather disheveled. However, when he turned around, Lin Muyu disappeared again. Her aura was completely gone, as if she had merged with the entire forest. Above, Mo Luo hurriedly raised his head and held his sword horizontally. With an angry roar, he rose from the ground and shouted, "Blaze light cut." Amidst the buzzing sound, the celestial bodies of all living beings merged with the celestial bodies of the Xianyuan sword. When the power surged into the sword, Lin Muyu's confidence was boosted. The Xianyuan sword was indeed a divine weapon. The morality it contained had at least doubled the power of the 3rd star. It then blasted down on Mo Luo's head. 3 luminaries' calamity. Violent sounds rang out incessantly, and the ground began to crack open. A tyrannical force swept out, uprooting the trees. As for the saplings, they were directly turned into powder. When the two swords collided, the power was in no way inferior to that of the magic crystal cannons. Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi stood in place, unmoving. The strong wind blew against their divine walls, but it was unable to move them at all. As spectators, their strength was actually not inferior to the authorities. With the 3rd sword, Mo Luo was once again at a disadvantage. After the blaze light cut was neutralized, the power of Lin Muyu's 3rd star continued to penetrate into Mo Luo's divine walls. Furthermore, it was an overwhelming morality that Mo Luo hated very much. Although he was a god, Mo Luo had never cultivated his heart but his physique. He hated this kind of hypocritical morality to the core. Lin Muyu was still moving quickly, looking for an opportunity to attack twice. 4 luminaries' demon god's cry. 5 luminaries' 8 wastelands' destruction. Mo Luo was in an even more sorry state. He never thought that a dignified god emperor like himself would be repeatedly defeated by a god king. Even if his opponent had the disposition of a supreme being, it shouldn't be like this. Finally, Mo Luo noticed the sword in Lin Muyu's hand and asked, "Your sword, what exactly is its origin?" "You don't need to know its origin. You only need to know that this is my ancestor's sword." "Ancestor?" Mo Luo suddenly felt a burst of anger and roared, "Die, you arrogant brat." He finally used 100% of his divine power. Everything in the surrounding forest started to evaporate and even the gravitational field started to spin. Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi quietly stood in place, observing the power of the Western Heaven Realm's God Emperor. In the field, Lin Muyu also slowly flipped the Xianyuan sword. The long sword hummed in response. It seemed that the Xianyuan sword also hated Mo Luo, this vicious and evil god. This 4-winged angel used his strength to bully the weak, and he was the only supreme being. He didn't cultivate as an immortal but as a devil. Since he was a devil, then the Xianyuan sword had the right to exterminate devils. Pa pa pa. Streams of light blossomed on the Xianyuan sword. The world spun and the universe reversed. Lin Muyu let out a low roar and activated the 2nd strongest attack of the 7 stars. 6 stars heavenly tribulation. Boom. The huge ball of light expanded, tearing a huge hole in the ground. Waves of air rushed towards the surroundings. This time Lin Muyu had used 100% of his divine power. Otherwise, it would be impossible to subdue this 71st heaven paradise 4-winged angel. The 4 wings on Mo Luo's back were partially torn by the supreme divine power. His feathers fluttered in the air. His breathing was very rapid. This attack, even if he used all his strength, he couldn't gain the slightest bit of advantage from Lin Muyu. This 7 stars heavenly tribulation was powerful and overbearing. It was indeed not something that ordinary martial arts could compare to. Come, what other abilities do you have? Feel free to use them. All right. Lin Muyu's blood vessels churned from the shock. A trace of blood even flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He stretched out his hand and touched a drop of blood. Immediately, the blood evaporated into a small ball of blood mist on his fingertip. The golden supreme divine power quickly rushed in and fused with the blood mist. Then it condensed into a large ball of blood-red light on the blade of the sword. Come. The most powerful attack was coming. Blood refining the firmament. This was an attack that was different from the 7 stars heavenly tribulation. It drew on the power of the stars and the explosive power of the bloodline. Mo Luo's soul trembled slightly. He knew how powerful this attack was. He hurriedly raised his light sword. His body danced in the air, creating a golden light wall. Like a folded sharp blade, he attacked Lin Muyu. He roared, "Light all slash!" The Xianyuan sword suddenly shone brightly. Buzz! Amidst the clanging sound of the sword, the blood refining the firmament broke through the opponent's light wall. Dang! A crisp sound rang out. Mo Luo's light sword was actually forcibly cut into 2 by the Xianyuan sword. Then the blood refining the firmament fell, directly smashing Mo Luo's divine wall. As the Xianyuan sword slashed down, Mo Luo's body was split into 2. However, he didn't become a corpse. Instead, he directly evaporated under the power of the blood refining the firmament. In the air, a dazzling godhead was floating there, glowing with light. With the power of the Xianyuan sword, Lin Muyu actually killed a god emperor in just 7 moves. So powerful, Tang Xiaoxi opened her mouth wide. So powerful, Mu. Qin Yin had a faint smile on her lips. She knew Lin Muyu's power. With the power of the Xianyuan sword, this result was actually expected. Clatter. Lin Muyu grabbed the godhead and put it into her pouch. This way, together with Bailey Qin's godhead, they now had 2 godheads of god emperors. Moreover, Mo Luo's godhead was actually a heavenly Dao godhead. It was very good. At this time the sound of hooves could be heard. Wei Chou Su Jiantao came with light cavalry. They all looked at the forest that was already on fire, dumbfounded. What happened? What happened here? Su Jiantao asked. Wei Chou was also a god state expert, so his perception was stronger. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, Your Highness. It seems that Your Highness has just killed a god state expert." Lin Muyu nodded and said, "We did not guess wrong. The ruler of Western Heaven Realm did indeed send another batch of angels to Shattered Cauldron World. However, most of them were intercepted and killed by the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. However, there were still some that slipped through the net. Although this Mo Luo is a god emperor, after being intercepted by the Demon Emperor, he lost at least 40% of his power. Otherwise, I would not have been able to kill him so easily." Qin Yin asked, "Brother, are you worried?" "And how can I not be worried? If a few more God Emperor level 4 winged angels appear and we are not present, it will probably cause a series of disturbances." Tang Xiaoxi said, "We can only take one step at a time. Since everyone is awake, let's continue marching and reach the steel wall as soon as possible. There should be a bloody battle there." "Alright, pass down the order, continue marching full speed." "Yes, Your Highness." After the sun rose, the fog dispersed rapidly. The water of the rice river flowed slowly, and there were messy sounds amidst the gurgling water. The Tianji Empire's army on the east bank had finally gathered enough bamboo rafts and started to cross the river. Prepare for battle. Feng Jixing did not sleep the entire night and sat on the battlement in a daze. At this moment he decisively gave a military order. He pressed his hand on the hilt of the Crimson Phoenix saber and said, "All magic crystal cannons, listen up. Aim at the place on the Rice River where there are the most people but there are no dragon knights guarding the area. Don't King waste all the magic crystal cannons on the Dragon Imperial Spiral." "Yes, Your Highness, Prince Exon." Everyone laughed out loud. The enemy was at the gates, and Feng Jixing's vulgar words made everyone feel more relaxed. After all, many of them were new soldiers and had never participated in a battle before. Looking at the densely packed crowd, some of them were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. If they did not take some measures, they would not be able to fight this battle. In the distance, the densely packed bamboo rafts started to cross the river. The magic crystal cannons on the city walls also started to fire. Boom, boom, boom. Many mushroom clouds were set off in the distance. The prowess of the magic crystal cannons was very great, and huge waves that were several meters tall immediately rose on the Rice River, overturning many of the bamboo rafts that were protected by the Dragon Imperial Spiral. Not all of the Tianji Empire's soldiers knew how to swim, and there were many cries for help. Zhang Wei laughed out loud. There are so many people from the Tianji Empire. Will they never be able to finish all of them? Then let's continue. I want to see how many of them are worthy of death. Feng Jixing fell silent, his brows furrowed tightly. What's wrong, Your Highness Prince Exon? Scholar Ling asked. Feng Jixing looked at the army crossing the river on the Rice River and said, I'm worried about something. What is it? Luo Yu was also interested. Feng Jixing said, We've lost many of the magic crystal cannons in the hands of the Tianji Empire. And you see, when the steel wall was built, it was used to attack the demon race, and it was very close to the shore. That way, the demon race would be able to enter the shooting range of the white drill arrows when they reached the shore. But we neglected one thing, and that is that there were no magic crystal cannons at that time. Now the magic crystal cannons are getting better and better, and their shooting range is as high as 1,000 meters. If the people on the other side can use the magic crystal cannons, then they can directly bombard our steel wall on the other side. As he said that, Feng Jixing sighed. As time goes on, the situation of the war will also change, and we have neglected this point. Luo Yu, Zhang Wei, Chu Chu and the others' expressions changed drastically. It seemed that they finally understood the reason why Baiming Huan hadn't launched the attack yet. He was waiting for the magic crystal cannons to be in position. What are you waiting for? Luo Yu raised her eyebrows and looked at everyone. All the Eagle Scouts, go out and find out about the enemy's situation. Once you find the magic crystal cannons, report back immediately. Chapter 923. In the morning, a rumbling sound came from the north. Thick smoke rose from the purple mushroom cloud. The ground was shaking slightly. The steel defense wall that was at least 100 meters long was razed to the ground after nearly 10 consecutive cannon blasts. I knew it. Feng Jixing clenched his teeth and shouted in a low voice. Zhang Wei, take some men and block the gap. We can't let the Tianji army break through our defense line so easily. Behind us are the defenseless states and prefectures of Tsangnan province. We can't let the Tianji army break through even if we all die here. Yes. Zhang Wei, who was riding on the horse, saluted to Feng Jixing with his long saber. Then he led the cavalry and charged forward. Meanwhile, the Dragon Knight kept flying in the sky and released sword energy onto the city wall. The steel defense wall that was nearly 10 miles long had turned into a burning battlefield. Not far away, the Beeman King, Ice Palm, Fire Fist and other godly state experts had already started fighting with the Dragon Knights. Explosions of flames and divine power continuously rang out in the sky. Below the city, the densely packed army of the Tianji Empire had already blotted out the sky and covered the earth as they charged towards the Dragon Knights. Ladders, hooks and other weapons danced chaotically in the air. The scene was extremely chaotic. In such a chaotic battlefield, the one who could remain calm would be the final winner. Feng Jixing. A sharp voice came from the sky. Feng Jixing looked up and saw a beautiful girl holding a long spear. She was wearing a battle angel costume and had 4 black wings spread behind her. She had a disdainful look on her face. Her long spear was shining brightly. In the next moment she dashed over like a sharp arrow, aiming at the city wall where Feng Jixing was standing. It's dual law. Feng Jixing raised his 2 sabers and charged out of the city wall without saying anything. He waved his sabers and a fierce firestorm was stirred up. The saber energy was hidden in the storm and flew out invincibly. Dozens of soldiers of the Tianji army who were pushing ladders were turned into ashes immediately. Buzz. Amidst the sounds of collision, Doris Tig's spear forcefully tore apart the energy field of the Sky Devourer. The surrounding time seemed to have come to a standstill, but Doris' figure accelerated quite a bit. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Feng Jixing and thrust his spear forward like the fangs of a venomous snake. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, Feng Jixing swept out the clear dragon blade in his left hand, and formed an endless wall of wind. Dang! It collided with Dugas' long spear. Suddenly, A tyrannical divine wave swept out and caused Feng Jixing's blood to boil. He fell down with a muffled groan and forcibly crashed into the city wall. He was battered and exhausted, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He had already lost. Die. Duo La let out a delicate cry, and her figure shot forward like a bolt of lightning again. However, just when she was about 10 meters away from him, a silhouette flew over. It was Scholar Ling. He raised a wrist guard in his hand and shouted in a low voice, "Myriad world of frost." Swoosh swoosh swoosh, heaven and earth were activated. This was a divine book, and a hexagonal frost wall appeared in front of her. Then more frost walls exploded on top of the wall, and they surged forward like a chain array. Duo La had no choice but to hold her spear and retreat. The pitiful hundreds of Tianji army soldiers below her were all frozen into ice cubes. They had already died in battle, and it was a tragic sight to behold. Ah! Duo La looked at the chain of explosions, and she couldn't help but gasp. At this moment, an old man in a white robe descended from the sky. He raised his hand slightly, and it seemed as if he was drawing the power of all the living beings in the surrounding forest. The green leaves danced wildly and condensed into a shield. Energy enshrouded the shield, and even the river behind him became even more turbulent. It was Chu Chu. He was the only one who had comprehended the laws of nature to this extent. Scholar Ling raised another divine book in his hand, and his eyes were filled with mockery. He smiled and said, "Duo La, you were fortunate enough to receive the inheritance of the black-winged battle angel. Why don't you cherish your life? Your Highness Feng Jixing, use your dimensional blade. I want to see if Duo La can continue to act fierce if the three of us work together." All right. Feng Jixing still wanted to use Duo La's power to intimidate others. He held his two blades horizontally, and electric currents surged around him. Gusts of dimensional wind appeared. Although Feng Jixing's divine power was much weaker than Duo La's, unknown power would always create a psychological pressure on people. Duo La looked coldly at Chu Chu and then at Scholar Ling. What shocked her even more was that not far away, a huge creature was tearing apart a dragon knight and his dragon in the air, roaring incessantly. It was the Beeman King. The Beeman King's strength was comparable to an expert who had just entered the God Emperor realm. This was no joke. Although Duo La was proud and arrogant, she definitely didn't have the confidence to challenge so many people with just her four-winged strength. Since when did the Shattered Cauldron realm have so many experts? She muttered to herself and disappeared with the Dig's spear. In the blink of an eye, she appeared in the chariot formation 3 miles away. The war drums thundered. Baiming Huan, Gong Shangming, Lin Tongtian, and the rest were on the main chariot watching the battle from afar. "Miss Duo La, how is the battle?" Baiming Huan asked respectfully with a smile. Duo La said, "Other than Feng Jixing, there are a few monsters that are ridiculously strong. Among them there is a huge beast with very strong spirit energy. I'm afraid that even the Dig's spear might not be able to defeat it. Other than that, there is another person who took out a very powerful heavenly book. I don't know where it came from, but it is very powerful. Marshall should have seen it too." "Yes." Baiming Huan said, "That person is Scholar Ling, a genius who specializes in all kinds of heavenly books. Unfortunately, he can't be used by me and is just a dog of Lin Muyu. As for that monster, it is the Beeman King, one of the White Leaf Four Masters. Although it is an idiot, it is born with great strength and cannot be underestimated. Miss Duo La, you don't need to be anxious. We just need to sit and watch. Their steel wall has already been destroyed by us by hundreds of meters. As long as our brave warriors break through their defense line, they will collapse on their own." Duo La nodded but then asked, "Marshall, don't you want to go to the battlefield yourself and kill Feng Jixing with your own hands? One Feng Jixing's life or death is not enough to change the overall situation. There's no need to rush." Baiming Huan narrowed his eyes and said, "Moreover, our scouts have reported that Lin Muyu, Xin, Tang Xiaoxi, and Su Jiantao have already led 60,000 soldiers into Tsangnan province. They will arrive at the battlefield in half a day at most. It is better not to act rashly." "Huh." Duo La suddenly laughed. She already knew that on the South Mountain battlefield famous warriors like Bailey Qin and Han Shu had all died. Although Baiming Huan was a God Emperor, he was just a warrior who had just entered the God Emperor realm. Compared to Bailey Qin, who was close to the peak of the 90 realm, how could Baiming Huan not be afraid? After all, Cultivation was for longevity and glory. Bai Minghuan did not want to die so early. Instead of going to the battlefield himself, it was better to exchange the lives of ants for a victory. The difference between a god and a human was that they understood the power of the god realm. But there was one thing that was the power of a god would be used up. Bai Minghuan only wanted to exchange the lives of the Tianji army for the lives of a god. Even 10,000 people for one god was worth it. At this moment, a dragon knight descended from the sky and said respectfully, "Marshal, someone from Winterfrost City wants to see you." "From Winterfrost City? Who is it?" "He claims to be an angel from the Western Heaven realm." "Oh." Bai Minghuan frowned. "Ask him to come." "Yes." The soldiers with shields in their hands scattered, and a man came riding over on a horse. He was wearing a tattered robe and his face was covered with scars that looked like he had been burned. He jumped off the horse and walked onto the chariot step by step with a cold look in his eyes. He stopped in front of Bai Minghuan, his face expressionless. "How dare you?" A dragon knight scolded. "Who are you? Why aren't you bowing to the marshal?" Bai Minghuan raised his hand to stop him. "Wait." He looked at the newcomer and smiled. "Who are you? Please show your identity." "Me." The newcomer smiled arrogantly and said, "Since you want to know, I'll do as you wish. Open your eyes and see who I am." As he spoke, he let out a low roar and his body instantly shot into the sky like a god that had descended into the world. Moreover, 2 pairs of pure white wings of light unfolded behind him. Shockingly, he was a 4-winged radiant angel. Radiant angels were very respected even in the Western Heaven realm. For example, high-level gods like Li Fei and Merlin, who were at least level 90 Grotto Heavens, were all radiant angels. A powerful force field surrounded them. Bai Minghuan was instantly covered in sweat. His heart was filled with respect and he could not help but kneel on one knee. Lower world. Lower world. Bai Minghuan greets Lord Radiant Angel. The Radiant Angel smiled in satisfaction and retracted his aura. "My name is Zai, 90 Grotto Heavens, Radiant Angel under Ruler Claude. I'm also the only Radiant Angel in this exile mission. Unfortunately, we fell into the trap of the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. Most of the angels have fallen and I don't know how many are still alive. So it's Lord Zai, Radiant Angel. My apologies." Bai Minghuan's face was ashen as he lowered his head. A Radiant Angel was enough to control dozens of dimensions. Bai Minghuan, a marshal, was really nothing in front of Zai. Zai's gaze fell on Dora, Luo Fei and the other battle angels nearby. Looking at the Tig's spear, Zai said lightly, "You're Dora?" "Yes, Lord Radiant Angel." Dora's arrogance was much more restrained. After all, Zai's identity was too noble. Zai sneered. "What a bunch of trash. Lord Ruler sent 10 of you to Shattered Cauldron Realm, but you still haven't made any progress after so long. How disappointing." Dora frowned. "Or there's a reason for this. It's only because Xian betrayed us and brought Terralyn, Lake and the other battle angels to the enemy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had so little success so far." "Xian betrayed us." Zai was shocked. "She's Blazing Angel Xian's sister. However, she has another identity. She is Empress Qin Yin of the Shattered Cauldron Realm. She was reborn after the 6 paths of reincarnation. She deceived Lady Xian, deceived the ruler and deceived everyone." "Humph, this despicable woman." Zai clenched his fists. "I'll kill her myself." Chapter 924. Bai Minghuan. Zai suddenly turned and looked at the general. Bai Minghuan hurriedly bowed. "Your subordinate is here, Lord Zai." "Which country do you belong to?" "The Tianji Empire." "How many people do you have now?" "Nearly 300,000. "How many people do they have?" "About less than 200,000. "Humph." Zai swung his sleeves and said with a livid face, "What a piece of trash. Didn't you claim that the Sky Pole continent is the strongest lower realm? You can't even take down a broken cauldron realm, not to mention that you have more soldiers. You're such a disappointment. If you can't be the general, I think we should replace you." Bai Minghuan's face was pale. "Lord Zai, please listen to me. My army's attacks are getting fiercer and fiercer. In less than a day we will break through this damned steel wall." "Steel wall?" "Yes." Bai Minghuan pointed at the chaotic battlefield in the west. "Lord Zai, please look. The broken cauldron realm has built a steel defense line along the river. They call it the steel wall. It's 20 meters tall and ordinary ladders and hooks can't compare to it. That's why we can't do anything. But now that we have the magic crystal cannons, this steel wall is nothing. Zai looked at him coldly, making Bai Minghuan's hair stand on end. Lord Zai, what's wrong? Humph. Zai sneered. I can see that you have the cultivation of a god emperor, but you're actually so weak. How can a mere mortal realm's iron wall stop you? Lord Zai, get out of my way. Zai looked at him coldly. I'll help you flatten this steel wall. If you can't break through the broken cauldron realm's defense line in one day, then kill yourself. Lord Yu. Before Bai Minghuan could finish, Zai had already regrown his 4 wings and flew towards the steel wall. He stood on the river and took out his sword, pointing it at the wall. Zai gave a devilish smile and laughed. Ants building break. Buzz. Rays of light that soared into the sky gathered together. In the blink of an eye, a huge wheel appeared beneath Midnight's feet. It was actually a divine wheel. That's right, the unique ability of an emperor god with 90 levels of Grotto Heaven Great Circle. Divine wheel. On the city wall, Feng Jixing and the others felt a strong sense of oppression. Looking from afar, the person on the river had already slashed out with his sword. His divine wheel whizzed over. Be careful. Without another word, Feng Jixing also struck out with a dimensional storm. However, it was clear that he was unable to contend against a divine wheel. Chu Chu bellowed and raised his hand to summon his strongest power. The trees on the ground were uprooted and formed a natural barrier. Scholar Ling was anxious. He took out a heavenly book and shouted, "Don't resist. You can't. Follow me and move." The sky suddenly lit up, and the heavenly book of the law of space brought everyone away from this section of the city wall. After moving about 500 meters away, everyone looked back and saw an extremely tragic scene. The steel wall that was nearly 300 meters long collapsed in an instant and was directly razed to the ground by the opponent's spirit wheel. Countless imperial soldiers on the city wall and inside the city had already been turned into flesh and blood, and most of them had been turned into ashes. It's a divine wheel. Scholar Ling frowned. Chu Chu remained silent. Feng Jixing gritted his teeth and said, "Damn the Western Heaven realm. Did they send someone again?" Scholar Ling said, "To be able to use a divine wheel, it must be at least a great perfection god emperor at the 90th Grotto Heaven stage. This is really troublesome. The steel wall most likely can't hold on anymore." "No, we must hold on." Feng Jixing's eyes were bloodshot. "I can't let Her Highness Yin and you see us abandoning the Empire's last line of defense. Even if I die here, I won't allow it. Zhu Hao, how often can you use your divine wheel?" "It depends on your cultivation. Ordinary great perfection god emperors can use their divine wheel once every 4 hours. If they use it too frequently, their cultivation will be damaged." 4 hours. That's enough. Feng Jixing carried his blades and flew up. He stood in the air above the broken city wall and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Block the gap and resist them. Magic crystal cannons, magic crystal crossbows, arrow boxes. Don't save ammunition for me. Fire." The resistance on the city wall became more intense. Luo Yu led the infantry and cavalry to form a human wall around the broken city wall. They fought with the flowing spirit army and the god Yi army who were trying to break into the defensive line. Above the river, Zai frowned. The Qin army's tenacity was beyond his imagination. Beside him, the 3 battle angels Duo La, Luo Fei and Duo Li flew over. Duo La smiled and said, "Sir Zai, the Qin army's courage is commendable. It's a pity that they are too weak. Thanks to Sir Zai's attack, I think our army will be able to break through their defensive line soon." Zai snorted and did not say anything. He was a strange person. His arrogance was even higher than Duo La's. 20 miles away, the 60,000 soldiers entered the unicorn forest. Returning to the old land made everyone feel a myriad of emotions. Qin Yin closed her eyes. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. She muttered, "The battle is very intense. The steel protective wall has already been damaged in many places." Her cultivation was very high. Ever since she obtained the eyes of blazing light, she had relied on her spiritual perception. Hence, her spiritual perception was much more sensitive than others of the same cultivation. Just from the tremors and auras coming from the ground, she could basically determine the situation of the battlefield. Lin Muyu gently stroked Taksha's mane, telling her not to be so anxious. They were indeed getting closer and closer to the battlefield. Looking into the distance, they could even see the rising smoke in the sky. That was the masterpiece of the magic crystal cannons. Let's hope they can withstand it, Xin Yifan said. At that moment, Su Jiantao galloped over on his horse. He said respectfully, "Your Highnesses, we just received news from our scouts. Baiming Huan's 300,000 soldiers are almost all out. There are only about 20,000 soldiers and 50,000 backup soldiers left behind. These backup soldiers are basically the surrendered soldiers or citizens of the empire. They don't have much fighting power." "You want to raid the food camp?" Lin Muyu asked with a smile. "Yes." Su Jiantao said, "Food is the foundation of an army. An army of 300,000 soldiers consumes at least 1 million kilograms of food every day, and at least 500,000 kilograms of vegetables. The food of the Tianji Empire is basically looted from Winter Frost City and the nearby cities, so it won't be much. As long as we burn their food, they won't be able to fight for long. Once they have the intention to retreat, our army can pursue them." Lin Mu smiled. Su Jiantao seemed to have matured into a true general who could take charge of an area by himself. Which famous general did not plan for their rations all day long? That was a basic quality of life. "Tell me, how are you going to raid them?" Su Jiantao said, "We can't send too many people. 5,000 light cavalrymen will be enough. We'll split up from here and bring along some kindling. We'll rely on the war horses to swim across the river. However, we must restrain the enemy on the main battlefield. Otherwise, these 5,000 people will be easily hunted down by the Dragon Knights or Godly State experts." "Don't worry." Lin Muyu raised her eyebrows and said, "Xiao Yin, Xiao Shi and I will go to the main battlefield to keep the enemy busy. You and Wei Chou will lead 5,000 light cavalries there. Listen to my orders. Don't come back. After burning their granaries, immediately head east and burn all their food teams and supplies. It will take at least 5 days to get to Winter Frost City from here. Since Baiming Huan dares to come, I will starve his 100,000 men to death." As she said that, Lin Muyu pulled out a token arrow from a guard's hand and said, "Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, listen to my orders. I will allow you two to act according to the situation. Once you enter the east of the river, I will not give you any orders anymore. You two can act on your own and cause as much damage as you can to their rear. Don't worry about anything. In this battle, not only will I crush the Tianji Empire on the river, I will also make them suffer heavy casualties on their way back from Songnan Province to Lingdong Province." "Yes, Your Highness." The two generals knelt down together. After receiving the token arrow, they immediately chose their men and left. Meanwhile, Lin Mu looked into the distance and said, "Speed up the march. The main battlefield needs our strength. Also, where is Xiling's secret weapon?" "In the middle of the army, led by dozens of wild warriors." Tang Xiaoxi smiled and said, That's good. Although the secret weapon might not be of real use, it could at least deter the Celestial Pole continent, right?" In the afternoon, the 50,000 men under Lin Muyu finally reached the steel wall. Looking from afar, the steel wall had already collapsed for a long time, and the two sides were engaged in a close combat under the wall. Roar, roar, roar. Among the rubble, the roars of the tiger leopard cavalry were very ear-piercing. After tearing apart a group of Imperial soldiers, they immediately rushed toward the back of the unicorn forest. That was the camp for the wounded soldiers, and it was also the temporary location of the spiritual medicine department where Chu Yao was. Lin Muyu immediately pulled out the Xianyuan sword and shouted, "Kill them! Don't let them get close to the camp for the wounded soldiers. Duke Fan, Aunt Lien, you two immediately lead the main force to reinforce Big Brother Feng Jixing." Amidst the sound of hooves, Lin Muyu led a group of elite cavalrymen and rushed over. The Xianyuan sword was very sharp and it emitted many sword energies. In the blink of an eye, she killed a group of tiger leopard cavalry single-handedly. By the time Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi arrived with the banished army, the army of nearly 3,000 tiger leopard cavalry had already fallen apart. "Kill them." In the distance, another group of Tianji army broke through the defensive line and rushed over. There were over 10,000 cavalrymen and heavy cavalrymen, and they rushed over majestically. "Xiaoyin," Lin Muyu said in a low voice, "it's time to use your power." Qin Yin suddenly left her original position and flew into the sky in the next moment. She opened the eyes of flaming dawn, and the enemies on the ground were instantly set ablaze. Those cavalrymen and heavy cavalrymen didn't dare to look directly at the eyes of flaming dawn. They were dumbfounded as if their souls had been electrocuted. Dozens of seconds later, the heavy cavalrymen of the Longdan army camp swept across the battlefield like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. On the city wall, Feng Jixing and the others saw the scene in the distance. Feng Jixing couldn't help but tremble with excitement. He laughed and said, "Brothers, Her Highness the Empress is back. Her Highness Yin is back. She is fighting side by side with us." Everyone raised their weapons and shouted. Their morale was instantly raised. Chapter 925. The steel wall continued to collapse under the roar of the magic crystal cannons. The gap was getting bigger and bigger. In the blink of an eye, the more than 50,000 people brought back by Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had all gone to block the gap. Meanwhile, the hundreds of thousands of people led by Feng Jixing, Chen Xiaoli, Qin Yan and others were also fighting with the enemy in the city. The entire defense line of the steel wall was no longer organized. It was completely like a pot of boiling soup. The only order was probably the thousands of people personally led by Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu. Under Feng Jixing's order, nearly 10 different-sized Qianquan battle formations were gathered at the gap of the city to resist the attack of the Tianji Empire's army. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu led thousands of iron hooves to attack the enemy who crossed the steel wall wantonly like a sharp knife. They strangled the powerful enemies who were besieging the city from inside and outside. In the sky, Qin Yin held the star's sword and spread her wings behind her. She led the 3 battle angels, Terralin, Lake and Zhou Xian, to kill the dragon knights of the Tianji Empire. In the blink of an eye, at least 7 to 8 dragon knights were killed by the eyes of blazing dawn. In addition to the roaring sound of the machines behind them, 2 chariots followed the footsteps of Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi under the protection of the army of the Land of Exile. They launched artillery attacks at the shield formation of the Tianji Empire in the distance. Swoosh! The sound of the explosion seemed to have come from underground, and the low rumble was deafening in the blink of an eye. It was the particle cannon, the only high-tech cannon in the Banished Land that had been preserved in perfect condition. Unfortunately, this was the only one left, otherwise it would have been of great use. "Everyone get on the city wall and shoot at your targets." A leader shouted, "We have pledged allegiance to the Dark Moon Queen. It's time to bleed for the Queen." In the blink of an eye, hundreds of experts from the Land of Exile rushed up the city wall with origin guns and sniper rifles in hand. They had all changed into the armor of the Qin Empire, but their weapons were different. The soldiers on the city wall were all shocked. They gave way and allowed these freaks to help defend the city wall. Soon, gunshots rang out one after another from the city wall. The experts from the Land of Exile only aimed at the generals of the Tianji Empire who were commanding the attack. They even shot the Kiliarchs and captaincy who were 700 to 800 meters away. In the blink of an eye, the pressure on the defensive line within several hundred meters had collapsed. The Tianji army who had lost their commanders were like headless flies. They were captured and killed one by Feng Jixing's net. Boom! With another 2 loud explosions, the wall between the 2 gaps was also razed to the ground by the magic crystal cannons. The Imperial soldiers on the city wall were almost vaporized by the power of the magic crystal cannons. It was too horrible to look at. In this way there was a gap as long as 1,000 meters in the steel wall. It was a bit scary. In the distance the bugle sounded. It was the signal of the Tianji Empire to attack. Countless beast cavalrymen and heavy cavalrymen swam across the water on their mounts. Dozens of dragon knights flew in the air to cover them. In the blink of an eye, they formed a battle formation of at least 50,000 people. This was also the most powerful attack the Tianji Empire could gather in the chaos. Charge! A general of the Divine Cloth Army who had lost an arm roared loudly. The army surged forward like a tide, constantly attacking the Qianquan battle formation that Feng Jixing had set up. Hence, in less than 10 minutes, it was like a tsunami crashing against a low dam. After all, the Qianquan battle formation was formed by manpower. How could a battle formation of 2,000 people block 50,000 people? When the Qianquan battle formation was completely destroyed, it meant that the biggest gap in the steel wall was also lost. Bastard! Feng Jixing descended from the sky with his dual blades. Swoosh 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 swoosh. He consecutively slashed out dozens of times, causing the cyclone to expand. There were no living people within dozens of meters of him, but it still couldn't stop the enemy's charge. His eyes were bloodshot and he had used up a lot of his divine power. He shouted, "Ah, you there about to break through the defense line." In the distance, Lin Muyu waved the Xianyuan sword and came over with thousands of troops. He said, "I know. Use the magic crystal crossbows and the tomes of heaven to kill them. They are all used up. The shells of the magic crystal cannons are almost used up." "Damn," Lin Muyu complained secretly. She never thought that the Qin Empire would run out of supplies after only half a day of the enemy's general attack. Now they could only rely on manpower. As long as they blocked the gap and relied on the long-range sniping of the troops from the exile land brought by Qin Yin, they could defeat the main force of the Tianji Empire. After all, they were on an expedition. If they couldn't take down the enemy after a long time, the morale of the army would be in chaos. Lin Muyu's voice was deep. While leading the cavalry of the Longdan army camp to charge, he concentrated his divine power into his voice line and shouted in a low voice, "All soldiers of the Empire who can still move, take your weapons and join me." Lin Muyu's battle formation. "Let's charge together. Even if we die on the battlefield, we will never be bullied again." The appeal of his roar was so strong that Lin Muyu's reputation in the imperial army could be said to be like the sun at high noon. It had even surpassed Feng Jixing's. Lin Muyu was the real king in the hearts of the soldiers of the empire. What an honor it was to follow the Qin Emperor Lin Muyu to charge and break through enemy lines. Even if they died, were defeated, or ended up disabled, at least their lives would not be in vain. At least when they talked to their grandchildren in old age, they could proudly say that they had once followed the imperial martial god to charge and break through enemy lines. Therefore, the defeated, injured, and disordered soldiers of the empire picked up their weapons one after another. They looked for war horses and shields to arm themselves. Then, like a trickle of water, they gathered around the Longdan army camp. Even many wounded soldiers in the wounded barracks had already picked up their spears and jumped on their horses to join the battle. More and more people gathered, and in the blink of an eye, they had gathered into a battle formation of nearly 50,000 people and rushed straight to the enemy. As they got closer and closer to the enemy, the roars of the tiger leopard cavalry continued. Lin Muyu knew that the enemy in front of him was one of the most elite armies of the Tianji Empire. It was a gathering of the best of the Xinyi army and the Liuji army. Buzz. The Xianyuan sword, the divine path sword, was stained with a lot of blood, but now it was like a holy sword fighting for freedom and dignity. The clanging sound was endless, and as Lin Muyu concentrated his divine power, it shone brightly. As he waved it, he directly struck a tyrannical chaos of the common people, sweeping the turf and soil towards the enemy. For a moment, the enemy was badly mutilated and people and horses were thrown off their feet. Nature of nature. After the chaos of the common people, Lin Muyu immediately raised his left arm and raised his hand to strike the elephant wheel shuttle. With a swoosh, the bottom of the elephant wheel cut through the ground and rushed forward, directly creating a vacuum in the battle formation of the tiger leopard cavalry. All the enemies along the way were turned into corpses. At this moment, Lin Muyu was like a killing god in the mortal world. "Petasaurus, come out and help the battle." Along with the roar, the little dragon shook its head and appeared. As soon as it appeared, it sprinkled a dragon's breath in the battle formation, burning a group of beast cavalry to death. Then it raised its neck and roared. The majesty of the divine dragon was displayed, and the group of tiger leopard cavalry almost stopped in their tracks. The tiger leopard cavalry was just the king of the jungle, but the little apple was the noble king of all beasts. The sound of collisions did not stop. In the blink of an eye, the tens of thousands of people led by Lin Muyu clashed with the enemy's 50,000 people. Dust flew everywhere. When two sides met on a narrow path, the brave would win. Whoever was the first to retreat would be the loser. Both sides wanted to be the winner, so this achievement of 1,000 years would inevitably be paved with corpses and lives. Above the city, Feng Jixing wielded his twin sabers with an ashen face. He strode in front of a dozen magic crystal cannons and shouted in a low voice, "Why aren't you firing? What are you waiting for?" Achillearcha's face was covered in blood and sweat. He cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness, the cannons are too hot. They need at least 30 minutes to cool down. Otherwise, the temperature will be enough to directly detonate the magic crystal cannons. Moreover, we only have 3 magic crystal cannons left. We are truly powerless. Your Highness, please investigate. This is a battlefield. Don't use such cowardly words to explain to me." Feng Jixing was indeed swift and decisive. He shouted to the people behind him, "Stargazer, supply the magic crystal cannons you brought with you to them. I will cool down these magic crystal cannons." "Yes, your highness." Stargazer nodded. Zhang Wei quickly raised his hand and brought out the last magic crystal cannons in the Imperial Army's inventory. Feng Jixing carried the azure dragon saber and came to the side of the magic crystal cannons. He roared in a low voice and circulated the law of ice to cool down the cannons. However, he also knew that he couldn't cool them down too quickly. Otherwise, the steel of the magic crystal cannons might not be able to withstand such a degree of cold and hot exchange. After nearly a minute, the magic crystal cannons were no longer burning hot. Feng Jixing stretched out his hand and pointed at the gap in the steel wall on the right. He said, "Look, they are all people from the Tianji Empire. Her Highness Yin and Princess Xi have all escaped from the Dragon Knights. Immediately open fire with all your might. Kill as many people as you can." Yes. The cannons roared. More than a dozen mushroom clouds rose from the gap in the steel wall that was nearly a kilometer long. Shock waves swept out in all directions. Without the protection of the Dragon Imperial Battle Ring, the Tianji Empire's army was only made of flesh and blood. They were blown to pieces and it was a tragic sight. Again, continuous cannons. Feng Jixing said loudly, "Her Highness Yu is fighting a bloody battle at the bottom of the city. All you can do is to reduce the pressure. This is a battle for your dignity as artillerymen." Within 5 minutes, 3 consecutive cannons were already the limit that the magic crystal cannons could withstand. At the same time, the Imperial Army's last stock of cannons was almost used up. At this moment, Qin Yin's voice sounded in Feng Jixing's ears. "General Feng, be careful. Someone is coming." In the distance, a group of God State warriors flew straight over. At the front was a middle-aged man with 2 pairs of holy wings on his back. The sharp sword in his hand shone brightly. Behind him were Baiming Huan, Dora, Lin Tongtian, Luo Fei and the others. Finally, the Tianji Empire's strongest force was going to be mobilized. Feng Jixing couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. "Damn it. Is that the Radiant Angel Midnight?" Terralyn looked into the distance in disbelief. "That's me, Terralyn." Midnight actually heard Terralyn's words from afar. With an indifferent expression on his face, he said, "Terralyn, you are the successor of the Radiant clan. Don't be stubborn. Do you know that you are helping our enemy?" "He is my friend." Terralyn slowly pulled out her sharp sword and said, "There is nothing wrong with fighting for a friend." Midnight shouted coldly in a low voice, "In that case, I will no longer care about my friendship with your father. I will help the Western Heaven Realm to clean up the mess." The golden light soared into the sky and an invisible force spread out, causing everyone to be shocked. "It's a spirit wheel." Lake's voice was trembling. After all, he was only a god king. In the face of such a powerful spirit wheel, the fear came from the bottom of his heart and couldn't be suppressed. Chapter 926. "Let me do it." Qin Yin slowly opened her arms and suddenly, a total of 13 golden god-binding chains emerged from her body. They encircled her body like elegant ribbons. The flames in the eyes of the blazing dawn flickered and fused with the god-binding chains. Then a dazzling ice crystal was formed in front of her. It was a huge dragon crystal. Qin Yin activated almost all the power of the Law of Light's defensive martial technique. She knew that if she couldn't block this attack, everyone would die. She would die. Tang Xiaoxi, Feng Jixing, Terralyn, Lake and the others would all die. No one could escape from this joke of fate. Wasn't it a joke for a king god to challenge a consummate realm god emperor? Very good. Zai sneered. Xian's sister is indeed extraordinary. I will release you from purgatory today. Xin, your mistake is that you shouldn't be Qin Yin. Boom. The huge spirit wheel covered the sky and the earth. It had the momentum to destroy everything. In terms of destructive power and range of power, Zai's spirit wheel couldn't be compared to the spirit wheel Lin Muyu used before. It was stronger, bigger and more powerful. Qin Yin gritted her teeth. Her face turned pale. The moment the spirit wheel collided with the celestial dragon crystal, she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She felt a chill in her heart. She realized that the celestial dragon crystal couldn't block the spirit wheel at all. Although her light divine power was the purest divine power, she was only a king god after all. Boom. The celestial dragon crystal began to collapse. However, at least half of the spirit wheel's power remained. Even if this half of the divine power swept across the entire city wall, Tang Xiaoxi, Terralin, and the others would be fatally injured. Qin Yin didn't hesitate anymore. With a shout, her body was bathed in flames. She rushed into the spirit wheel with the star's sword in her hand. Xiaoyin. Tang Xiaoxi screamed hysterically. Xin. Terralin stood there in a daze, unable to do anything. However, the movement of the divine wheel slowed down because of Qin Yin's power. The next moment, the divine wheel suddenly surged with countless sword lights. Terralin's beautiful eyes widened. It's Lady Xian's 7 strikes. Split. That's right, Qin Yin exerted all her strength to execute the 7 slashes that Xian had taught her. First slash, split. Sparks flew everywhere and his divine wheel trembled slightly. Second slash, judgment. Golden light tore through the sky. His divine wheel was on the verge of collapse. The third slash, annihilation. The power of the divine wheel was finally exhausted. Countless beams of sword light pierced through the edges of the divine wheel and completely destroyed this life-threatening wheel. However, it also brought with it a golden rain of blood. When Qin Yin was ejected from the divine wheel, she was already covered in wounds. Xiaoyin. Tang Xiaoxi was the fastest. She shot out like lightning and hugged Qin Yin in the air. However, she saw that Qin Yin's face was frighteningly pale. The divine wall around her had already been swallowed and destroyed by the power of the divine wheel. Cuts appeared on her fair skin. If it wasn't for her profound cultivation, she would have been obliterated by the divine wheel. Xiaoxi, be careful. Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's hand and forcibly used her grain's god power to slide down the city wall with Tang Xiaoxi. However, her grip became tighter and tighter, not letting Tang Xiaoxi go out. The opponent was too strong. Qin Yin's action was no different from not wanting Tang Xiaoxi to be in danger. However, in the air, Zai, Dora, Baiming Huan and the others still came. Zai had only used up 30% of his divine power when he used the divine wheel, so he still had his combat ability. Dora spread her 4 wings behind her. Holding the Tig's spear, she smiled and said, Tang Xiaoxi, do you want to fight me again? Xiaoxi, no. Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's hand tightly. However, she was shocked to find that Tang Xiaoxi's appearance was changing. She had already entered the 9-tailed transformation, and her beautiful face had become even more bewitching. It was not just the 9-tailed transformation but the second stage of the transformation, the demon god transformation. Tang Xiaoxi's jade-like palm instantly slipped out of Qin Yin's hand. She smiled gently and said, Xiaoyin, everyone is fighting with their lives on the line. How can I hide in the back alone? You should quickly rest and recover your strength. If I can't beat them, I still have to rely on you. As she spoke, Tang Xiaoxi transformed into a beam of light and shot into the sky. She fought with Dora and the flames surged continuously. The two of them were evenly matched and the winner would not be decided in a short period of time. However, Zai held his light sword and stood proudly in the air. He said, Does this mean that I have no opponents? In your dreams. A handsome figure instantly appeared in front of him. It was Scholar Ling. Soon the other 3 figures gathered together. Ice Palm, Fire Fist and Behemoth King had all arrived. Su Hao gently waved the paper fan in his hand and said with a smile, Zai, you are the radiant angel of the heaven realm. We, the 4 peerless white leaves of the mortal realm, are fighting you 4 against 1. It's not like we are bullying you, right? Zai couldn't help but laugh out loud. The few of you are the 4 peerless white leaves that Lin Mu relies heavily on? That's right. Come, I also want to see how strong the people left behind by the former king of gods Fuxi of East Heaven are. Roar. Behemoth King didn't say anything. He charged over with a furious roar and punched Zai's head 3 times consecutively, forcing Zai to retreat continuously. He didn't even have time to prepare himself. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Flames and frost attacked from both sides. Their power was extremely vigorous and domineering, making it difficult for Zai to endure. After all, he was fighting 1 against 4. Moreover, he was already injured when he pierced through the flame knot of the 7 luminaries demon emperor. He had just used up 30% of his power to condense the divine wheel. Even though his power was far above any of the 4 peerless white leaves, he indeed felt that he couldn't split himself into 2 in a short period of time. Luo Fei. Lake slowly rose into the air. The battle angel wings on his back spread open and a sword of light condensed in his hand. He said, "We didn't have a clear winner in the chosen god trial. Why don't we have a showdown this time? You should have thought that you would die a horrible death when you followed that poisonous woman Duola." Luo Fei's expression was solemn as he raised his shield. He knew how powerful Lake was. The martial arts of the Dark Light family had its own lineage. The laws of light contained the power of darkness. Although they were despised by the gods of the Western Heaven realm, no one dared to underestimate the Dark Light family. In the second round of the chosen god trial, Lake was third while Luo Fei was fourth. The two were originally evenly matched. "Come, Lake, let me see the power of the Dark Light family." "As you wish." Lake roared angrily. His long sword struck Luo Fei's shield with the power of dark light. It was indeed tyrannical. The two of them turned into a ball of flames and fell from the sky. They fell directly into the Paddy River. The river water surged and swirled. Rays of light shone on the surface of the river. The battle under the water was obviously extraordinary. Chu, Feng Jixing and Ouyang Yan looked at each other. This battle was about to become a battle of gods. Baiming Huan and Lin Tongtian looked at each other and smiled. Baiming Huan said, "Lord Dragon Knight Lin Tongtian, it's time for us to go. Send out all the Dragon Knights. In this battle we must kill Qin Yin, Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi and Feng Jixing. We must destroy the Qin Empire." "Yes, Marshal." Dozens of Dragon Knights quickly gathered in the sky and rushed toward the city wall with Baiming Huan and Lin Tongtian. Qin Yin suddenly looked up. Her flaming eyes were filled with cold light. Her star's sword was still trembling. She stepped on the bricks of the city wall and turned into a beam of light that shot toward Baiming Huan. Even though she was injured in the spirit wheel, she still chose Baiming Huan as her opponent. Ouyang Yan, Feng Jixing and Chu flew up one after another and fought with Lin Tongtian and the other Dragon Knights. Once the Battle of Gods began, the whole battlefield became even more chaotic. On the ground it was a battle of mortals, while in the sky it became a battle of gods. But what was amazing was that the power of both sides was balanced, and the only one who could break this balance was naturally Lin Muyu. While leading the charge, he paid attention to the fight in the sky. The battle between Tang Xiaoxi and Dora could not be decided in a short time, but it was obvious that Tang Xiaoxi's second form was very harmful to her body, and she could not fight for long. And Qin Yin was seriously injured and would not be a match for Baiming Huan. So the balance of this battle was on Baiming Huan's side. As long as Baiming Huan was defeated, the morale of the Tianji Empire would naturally be disturbed. Either they did not attack, or if they attacked they had to defeat the enemy in one blow. A few minutes later, Lin Muyu suddenly disappeared from the battle horse, and the one leading the charge was the masterless treading in snow warhorse. In the sky, the Xianyuan sword's light suddenly grew brighter. Baiming Huan, who was fighting with Qin Yin, suddenly felt a chill around him. Even the four-dimensional space was completely blocked, and his body's movement speed became slower. "It's here." Baiming Huan sensed the approaching danger and hurriedly dodged. He saw the Xianyuan sword wrapped in frost fall right on the tip of his nose, and with a crack, it cut off half of the heart protection mirror on his chest. "Lin Muyu." Baiming Huan was furious. Lin Muyu's sword missed and her body glided in the wind. She looked down at Baiming Huan, sneered and growled, "Freeze." The air froze instantly. This was a higher level of the snow ice. Baiming Huan was caught off guard and his body could not move at all. His whole body was frozen into a huge block of ice in the air. Lin Muyu pointed the Xianyuan sword at Baiming Huan and growled, "Die." The blade shone with starlight and the power of the seventh star roared out. Suddenly, the power of thousands of stars gathered in the air and bombarded Baiming Huan, washing him in blood in the wind. At the same time, the huge star power fell at a 45-degree angle toward Daojiang, where the Divine Cloth Army was densely packed. Boom, boom, boom. The earth rumbled and almost everyone looked in Lin Muyu's direction. The seven glorious stars transformation had consumed at least 30% of Lin Muyu's power. Therefore, not only did she have to kill Baiming Huan, she also had to kill thousands of Divine Cloth Army soldiers. Only then would she be able to shake their morale. Under the super close attack, Baiming Huan floated in the air, his eyes lost. His chest, legs and even his forehead all had holes, which were the signs of being pierced by the star power. Bang! The body exploded. The Tianji Empire's marshal Baiming Huan had actually died on the battlefield, just like the marshal of the Blackstone Empire, Bailey Qin. Chapter 927. Bai Minghuan is dead. Lin Muyu endured the pain from the backfire of the 7 glorious stars, stood in the air holding Bai Minghuan's collar with one hand and carried his body in the air. For a moment all the soldiers of the Tianji Empire on the ground were dumbfounded. Yes, that cloak was Bai Minghuan's martial cloak. Everyone was stunned. Bai Minghuan was an invincible god emperor. How could he die? However, Bai Minghuan was still dead. The morale of the army was in chaos. On the ground, Situ Xin and Situ Shui led the army of the Longdan army camp to kill the enemies who had lost their will to fight. Feng Jixing also waved the flag and Luo Yu Zhongwei and the others led the charge. It seemed that the initiative of the war had returned to the side of the Qin Empire. Qin Yin was covered in wounds, and the star's sword in her hand was shaking slightly. But her golden-red eyes of flame were staring at another figure in the air and she shouted, "Dora, it's time for you to pay with your life." "What?" Dora, who was fighting with Tang Xiaoxi, hurriedly waved the bone spear to shake off Tang Xiaoxi's sharp claws. But Qin Yin was too fast. Under the gaze of the eyes of flame, Dora felt that he had nowhere to hide. At the same time, the star's sword carried the power of the first strike of Xian's 7 cuts, and instantly burst out dense sword shadows. Tang Xiaoxi took the opportunity to take a step back to catch her breath. There was a hint of exhaustion on her beautiful face. It was obvious that fighting against Dora, who was wielding 2 divine weapons, had taken too much of her demon power. "You traitor of the heaven realm!" Dora bellowed as her expression turned sinister. 4 black wings spread open on her back, and her aura was even stronger than Qin Yin's. Dora was a black-winged battle angel. The more people she killed, the stronger her bloodlust would become, and the more power her black wings would absorb. At this moment, it was only natural that her cultivation had surpassed Qin Yin's. The spear continued to stab forward, and after nearly 20 swings, Qin Yin's split strike was finally resolved. Without waiting for Dola to recover, Qin Yin directly launched the second strike of Xian's 7 slashes. Judgment. Dola's murderous nature was so strong that even Qin Yin, with her kind nature, wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. Whoosh. The dagger of time suddenly flashed and the space seemed to freeze. Qin Yin's slash speed also slowed down by more than 10 times. Dora, on the other hand, had a hint of a smile on her face. Suddenly, her figure flashed and the sharp spear in her hand stabbed straight at Qin Yin's back. Clang! The spear directly pierced through the god wall. Just as Dora thought he had succeeded, the wild glint in his eyes grew even brighter. However, the spear could not advance any further no matter how hard he tried. That was because a strong hand had grabbed the middle of the spear. It was Lin Muyu. "You." Dora could not help but groan inwardly. "Let go." Lin Muyu raised her hand and swung her sword. The Xianyuan sword carried the profound energy of the 3rd star and the overwhelming righteous energy as it swept across. This tyrannical power had yet to even reach Dora, but it already made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Dora had a ruthless heart that respected the strong, so he hated the holy energy contained within the Xianyuan sword, which contained the power of heaven and earth and had compassion for all living things. If he did not let go of the spear, this arm was destined to die under the Xianyuan sword. Dora had no doubt that the person who could kill Bai Minghuan could easily kill him as well. Moreover, this sword was really too powerful. It must be a divine weapon from outside the heaven domain. Otherwise, it could not have such a tyrannical aura. This kind of strength was not something that the weapons in the mortal realm could match. Whoosh! Dora hurriedly retracted his hand. Lin Muyu threw the spear backward and shouted, "Xiaoxi, catch!" In the air, Tang Xiaoxi's 9 flame tails gathered together and flew away. She successfully got the spear. Taking a deep breath, she smiled gently and said, "Mu got it." As she spoke, Lin Muyu had already stood in front of Qin Yin and attacked Dora 7 or 8 times in a row. Each attack was fiercer than the last. The invisible elephant spell's aura was so overwhelming that Dora could not handle it. The Xianyuan sword's attacks also had a killing effect. Broken feathers kept flying out of Dora's 4 black wings. It was a tragic scene. Qin Yin's eyes were full of hatred. The aura of the flaming eyes was locked on Dora, making her feel like she was dying. "Brother Yu, you must kill her or she will kill more of us." Lin Muyu's attacks became even more ferocious, while Qin Yin summoned the god-binding chains and the celestial dragon crystal to assist her in battle. The 3 of them clashed in the air and the wounds on Dora's body increased. Luo Fei, save me. She couldn't help but scream. However, Luo Fei did not even have the time to save himself. How could he have the leisure to save her? In the middle of the battle in the air, a person wielding an ice spear urged his dragon to charge down. He shouted, "Miss Dora, I'll cover you. Retreat quickly." The person was none other than Lin Tongtian, one of the 3 dragon riders. The ice spear shone brightly and turned into an ice wall in front of Lin Muyu and Qin Yin. Dora held the dagger of time and suddenly moved a few hundred meters away. That was the ability to accelerate time. Bang bang. Lin Muyu broke the ice wall with 2 swords. She looked at Lin Tongtian coldly and said, "We meet again." "Ah, that's right. It's a pity that I had eyes but failed to see. I didn't know that you were the Qin Emperor of the Qin Empire. If I had known, I would have killed you at all costs." Lin Tongtian's body trembled slightly. He had already used up a lot of his divine power in the previous battle. Now that he had to fend off Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, he was almost at the end of his rope. He didn't even have enough strength to flap his dragon wings. Lin Muyu looked at him coldly and said, "Do you know the consequences of letting Dora go?" "I don't know. I only know that Miss Dora is an angel from the upper realm. Our Tianji Empire is a territory of the upper realm. I have to save her. Otherwise it will bring disaster to the empire." Lin Tongtian stood on the dragon's back and looked at Lin Muyu with clear eyes. He said, "Your Highness, the Qin Emperor, I'm sure you don't want to let me go. In that case, make your move. I know that the Lin Tongtian of today is no match for you. Moreover, you have a godly weapon that is even more powerful than the Dig spear." Lin Muyu lowered the Xianyuan sword in her hand and said, "You are an old acquaintance of Yao. I won't kill you. Take your own life. I'll leave you with a whole corpse." "In that case, thank you very much." Lin Tongtian's face was full of gratitude. Tang Xiaoxi and Qin Yin guarded the left and right sides of Lin Tongtian. Lin Tongtian probably couldn't even defeat one of the 3, let alone all 3 of them. "Ah!" Lin Tongtian suddenly threw his head back and laughed. His voice was trembling as he said, "I, Lin Tongtian, have spent my entire life killing enemies for the Empire and wiping out the demon spirits. I never thought that I would die in a foreign land. Perhaps this is karma. Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, if the 2 of you conquer the world one day, please treat the people of the world kindly." Lin Muyu said softly, "Don't worry, sir. We will. In that case, I have no regrets. Tell Miss Si Kongyao that although I, Lin Tongtian, failed her request not to attack the Shattered Cauldron world, I have been doing my duty ever since I entered the Shattered Cauldron world. I didn't kill a single commoner. I restrained my subordinates and tried my best to prevent the people from suffering. Take this as my compensation to Miss Si Kongyao. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. I should have followed Miss to the Blackstone Empire and become a mercenary." He didn't know that the mercenary Bai Zhe was actually Lin Muyu's subordinate. Qin Yin couldn't bear to see him like this. She said, "Lin Tongtian, if you have any regrets, why don't you stay in the Qin Empire? We will treat every capable general well." Lin Tongtian shook his head and said, "I'm already getting old. I still know what shame and integrity are. A loyal subject doesn't serve 2 masters. We'll meet again in the next life." As he said this, the divine power in Lin Tongtian's body suddenly became chaotic. Golden light burst out and his joints and meridians exploded. Blood splattered everywhere. His cultivation dissipated in the blink of an eye and he fell to his knees on the dragon's back. His black hair turned white in an instant. Once his divine power dissipated, he naturally lost the ability to maintain his youth. Lin Tongtian's face aged rapidly and he looked towards the east with tears streaming down his face. Lin Muyu's nose turned sour. She said softly, "Don't worry, my lord. I'll send someone to bring your ashes back to the celestial pole continent and hand them over to Yao. She'll bury you in your hometown." Lin Tongtian raised his head and looked at Lin Muyu. He lowered his head and fell backward. Just like that, Lin Tongtian, a dragon rider general and one of Sikong Ming's 3 disciples, committed suicide on the battlefield by destroying his meridians. "Retreat. Defend the shore." The shout of the 4-winged radiant angel Midnight came from the sky. He shook off the Demon King and raised his palm. A ray of light shone down, forcing the other 3 members of the 4 Masters of White Leaves to retreat. He turned around and disappeared in the blink of an eye. If the 4-winged radiant angel wanted to leave, there weren't many people who could stop him. On the ground, the army of the Tianji Empire also retreated like the tide. However, it wasn't easy for all of them to cross the river. This was a hard-won opportunity for a counterattack. Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu wouldn't let it go. The Longdan army camp, the Imperial Guards and the other legions counterattacked one after another. The sound of killing soared into the sky. At this time the sun had already set. After a whole day of killing, the battlefield was extremely bleak. However, it was gratifying that the Qin Empire had won a Pyrrhic victory. In the sky, there were still 3 dragon knights flying around. They were covering the retreat of the ground troops and releasing sword energy into the crowd. At the same time, one of them raised his head and saw a new magic crystal cannon on the city wall. He couldn't help but raise his dragon spear and shouted, "Follow me and destroy it." However, the protector of this dragon crystal cannon was Situ Senator. However, Situ Sin didn't stop the dragon knights from coming. He just said to the artilleryman beside him, "It's done. Aim and fire." "Yes, General." The cannon was quickly calibrated and the muzzle was raised. Bang! A flame was spat out. This magic crystal cannon didn't seem to be very powerful. It exploded less than 100 meters away from the barrel. Moreover, the range of the explosion was far less than the 50 meters of the heavy magic crystal cannon. It was only 10 meters. However, one of the dragon knights had already entered the explosion range. In the shock wave, tiny stones flew out and shot into the dragon knight's body. It actually avoided the dragon imperial's spiral. A miserable howl came from the sky. The people of the imperial army were dumbfounded. The magic crystal cannon had always been useless against the dragon knights. However, this cannon seemed to have hit the dragon knight. Chapter 928. Qin Xiling clapped his hands and laughed. "Sure enough, it's a success. Our god-slaying cannon has succeeded." Situsen looked to the other side and said, "Magic crystal cannon, give it a try." Yes. In the air, the god-level dragon knight that was hit hurriedly urged his dragon to escape, but it seemed that he couldn't escape the magic crystal cannon that was being calibrated on the city wall behind him. Bang! Raging flames stuck out its tongue, and suddenly there was an explosion 300 meters away. The light from the explosion of the magic crystal cannon instantly engulfed the dragon knight. Without the protection of the dragon imperial battle wheel, both the dragon knight and the dragon knight were blown to pieces. Even his divinity was probably blown up. On the city wall, a group of soldiers were dancing with joy. Looking at the enemies retreating like the tide, they suddenly felt that they had a new lease of life. The most important thing was that the Qin Empire finally had a weapon to deal with the god-state strong. The god-slaying cannon. Although it was only a prototype, at least it could be used as a deterrent. The battle went on until late at night. Most of the Tianji Empire's troops had already crossed the river. Those who couldn't cross the river were either killed or captured. Jiangshiku was not their territory. That night, almost no one slept. Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, Tang Xiaoxi and the others also didn't sleep. The battle was in full swing and no one could sleep. Moreover, almost everyone needed to heal. The steel wall had been blown up for nearly 5 kilometers, and there was basically no way to station troops in the city. Therefore, most of the troops were stationed in the unicorn forest behind the wall. At dawn, thousands of lights connected in the forest, and the sound of cooking could be heard everywhere. The soldiers had been fighting for a day and needed to replenish their strength. In the central tent, Chu Yao carefully applied medicine and bandaged Qin Yin's wound. She said, "Your Highness, who injured you to this extent?" Qin Yin closed her eyes and smiled softly. "It's not someone else who injured me. I just broke into the spirit wheel. Sister Chu Yao, thank you so much. When you bandaged me, he didn't know how to control his strength. It hurt so much." Chu Yao giggled. "You is a general, so of course he doesn't know what's important." Lin Muyu was sitting at the side, using his qi to heal Tang Xiaoxi's injuries. He realized that Tang Xiaoxi's bones would be damaged after her second transformation. If she didn't receive treatment for a long time, she would definitely become a cripple. Fortunately, his supreme divine power was of the same origin as Fushi's divine power, and Fushi's divine power itself had the ability to heal the divine body. Terralin, Lake, Xiangyu, Chu Chu, Su Hao and the others also returned one by one. The battle during the day ended before dawn the next day, and the men from each battalion had also returned. When Jin Yifan and Su Yu opened the tent door and walked in, Lin Muyu knew the results were out. "Master Fan, What's the result of the calculation? Lin Muyu asked. Zheng Yifan bowed respectfully, then bowed to Qin Yin and said, "Reporting to Your Highness, our army lost more than 114,000 men in this battle. That's half of our military strength." "So many?" Tang Xiaoxi murmured. "Yes." Zheng Yifan said, "The enemy's military strength was originally above ours." "So what's the result of the battle?" "We counted more than 143,000 corpses of the Tianji Empire soldiers and more than 8,000 captives. According to the number of people, the Tianji Empire still has about 150,000 soldiers in the west of Daojiang, which is 50,000 more than us. Moreover, it is said that there are still warships of the Tianji Empire in the East Sea, and they have already begun to recruit new soldiers in Lingdong province." Zheng Yifan's eyes were slightly uneasy as he said, "Your Highness, if the next battle is still like this, I'm afraid that even if we annihilate the Tianji Empire's expeditionary army, there won't be more than 10,000 soldiers left in our army." Qin Yin nodded. "Yes, I know. Master Fan, you've worked hard. Please take a seat." "Thank you, Your Highness." Feng Jixing sat cross-legged beside Lin Muyu and asked, "So what should we do next?" "Wait." Lin Muyu said, "Su Jiantao and Wei Chou have already led 5,000 light cavalry to the enemy's rear. Let's see how much rations they can burn. Once the Tianji Empire's rations run out, they will naturally retreat without attacking. At that time we can just send our cavalry to chase after them. When their people are so hungry that they can't walk, they will naturally be defeated." "Yes, then let's wait." Feng Jixing nodded, then looked up and said, "Luo Yu, pass down my order. All the prefectures in Songnan province must transfer half of the stored rations to the camp of the Tianji Empire's army, so that the soldiers can eat and drink to their heart's content and recuperate. In addition, gather war horses and capture horses that get lost in the battle, the more the better." "Yes, Your Highness." "Also," Lin Muyu said, "Luo Yu, send people to the unicorn forest to cut down trees and make wooden rafts, the more the better. We need to build many pontoon bridges. Once the Tianji Empire retreats, it will be time for us to chase after them." "Yes, I understand." In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. The injuries of Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, Qin Yin, Feng Jixing, and the others had basically recovered, but the repair work on the steel wall had not yet begun. It would only start after the battle was over. However, quite a number of civilian laborers had been recruited. Su Jiantao had guarded Songnan province for 5 years, and he had been conscientious. Wugu City was overflowing with wealth, and the manpower and material resources could still be considered to be able to keep up. Early in the morning, a few more troops appeared on the official road. They were all private troops from Tianshu province and Yunzhong province who had heard the news. After hearing about the great victory of the steel wall, all the feudal lords from various places came to rescue the empress. In fact, everyone knew that these people were just here to get a share of the spoils and receive more rewards after the empress returned to Zetian Palace Hall. Even some of the bandit leaders brought their men down the mountains to rescue the empress. The morning tea rippled with a faint fragrance. Qin Yin held the teacup and gently took a deep breath. She couldn't help but smile and say, "It still smells the same." Shangguan Jingyue chuckled and said, "Well, the tea in Wugu City is not much different from the tea in Lanyan City. It's good that Your Highness likes it." However, Feng Jixing was somewhat frowning. Although Qin Yin couldn't see it, she could feel it. "General Feng, what's wrong?" She was still used to calling Feng Jixing General Feng because this was how he used to be. Feng Jixing cupped his fists respectfully and said, "Your Highness, there are more and more troops in the Unicorn Forest. The feudal lords from Tianshu Province, Songnan Province and Lingbei Province have all taken out their family assets. This Unicorn Forest is filled with chaotic troops, but they don't obey orders. I sent Luo Yu and Zhang Wei to recruit their troops. The feudal lords from various places made different excuses, but none of them were willing to listen to my orders." Qin Yin nodded and didn't say anything. Su'er said, "When the conscription order was issued, we also thought of this result, but we didn't expect it to develop to this point. Now, the Imperial Army in the Unicorn Forest only has a total of 100,000 people, while the feudal lords have close to 300,000 people. They are divided into hundreds of feudal armies, and the largest of them has 40,000 people. However, they are all a motley crew and no one is willing to be the vanguard." Zheng Yifan said, The laissez-faire of power has already made these feudal lords not know what a ruler is. Qin Yin bit her red lips and asked, Xiaoxi, what do you think? Tang Xiaoxi put down her teacup and said, I went to see the feudal lords' armies this morning, and it's not too much to call them a motley crew. Many of the troops are even made up of farmers. In order to gather a strong army, the feudal lords have gone around snatching people, and there's even a rule of drawing 1 out of 3. That's not all. There should be about 2 million feudal lords' armies in the entire country, but most of them are farmers. These people should be discharged from the army and returned to farming. Otherwise, if the land can't grow food, how can the empire continue to fight? Then what does Xiaoxi mean? We have to think of a way to not only appease the feudal lords, but also make them reduce the number of troops. Otherwise, if this goes on for a long time, I'm afraid we'll fall into chaos. Feng Jixing made a cutting gesture. In my opinion, it's better to cut the Gordian knot and slaughter all the feudal lords. We'll take their elite troops and disperse the rest of the troops. That won't do. Tang Xiaoxi shook her head. Your method may work in troubled times, but once we expel the bandits from the celestial pole continent, we'll be ruling the country. If we use General Feng's method to rule the country, Xiao Yin definitely won't be able to be the empress. Qin Yin pursed her red lips and said, Actually, it doesn't matter if I don't become the empress as long as I can accompany you and you. Please don't. Tang Xiaoxi was a little anxious and said, Xiao Yin, you must not have such an idea. If you don't become the empress, I'm afraid the world will really be in chaos. At that time, all the feudal lords will proclaim themselves as kings and fight each other. The Qin Empire will really be finished. Alright then. I wonder what you thinks. Where's he? He went out early in the morning. I heard he went to spy on the military. Suyu couldn't help but frown. Suyu couldn't help but frown. A dignified marshal of the 3 armies going out to spy on military affairs is simply child's play. When he comes back, we must give him a good warning. But a crack appeared in the tent and Lin Muyu stepped out and said with a smile, What does Aunt Luo want to warn me about? Suyu pursed her lips. What did you spy on? The Flowing Harmony Army and the Divine Cloth Army have already started packing their supplies. If nothing unexpected happens, they will definitely retreat within 3 days. In addition, there was no smoke in their camp at noon yesterday. If nothing unexpected happens, they have already run out of food, so they directly skipped their lunch. They ran out of food. Feng Jixing asked excitedly. Yes, it should be. Lin Muyu asked with a smile. Big brother Feng, how many cavalry soldiers do we have? Don't worry. Feng Jixing said, I annihilated 60,000 wolf soldiers in Yunzhong province, and most of their mounts are well preserved. It can be said that as long as our main force of 100,000 soldiers can ride horses, we will have 100,000 cavalry. That's great. I saw that there are almost no war horses in the stables of the Tianji Empire. They started slaughtering the war horses a day ago. I reckon that in another 2 days they will all become infantry. If nothing unexpected happens, Wei Chou and Su Jiantao's operation behind the enemy's back has already been effective. The time to counterattack will also come in 1 or 2 days. Yes. Man proposes but God disposes. Sometimes, no matter how scheming people were, the factors of the right time and the right place would not change because of people's will. Although the Tianji Empire was strong, it always lagged behind others and would eventually be defeated.